The purpose of this demonstration video is to provide an overview of the three forms that are located on the bottom right of the website, and that is the Effective Teacher Pedagogy Observation Form, the High Yield Teacher Behaviors Observation Form, and the Student Indicators of Engagement Form. All three of these forms are based on the work of Dr. John Hattie, the author of Visible Learning, a synthesis of over 800 meta-analyses relating to achievement. And these forms were designed, it was a collaborative effort between the School University Research Network at the College of William & Mary and the Virginia Department of Education's Office of School Improvement. And let me go ahead and open one of these forms up. Let's take a look at a completed copy of the Student Indicators of Engagement form. Now, this particular form focuses on students, so the observer really observing student behaviors and student engagement in a classroom. The other two forms that I mentioned really focus on observing teacher behaviors. And in Dr. Hattie's work, one of the things he shared in the book I just mentioned is that much of what we do in education is positive. A lot of what we do has a positive effect on students. However, there are certain things that we do that have a much greater effect on students. And in Hattie's research, what he shared was that anything with an effect size of 0.40 or higher was worth doing. And so what these particular look-fors on all three of the forms speak to a lot of the research that was found to have effect sizes of 0.40 or higher. Now, as you can imagine, if you were just to hand this particular form to a teacher or to walk into a classroom as an observer and not be familiar with the research, it would be a little more difficult. So one of the things that SURN has done is to create some resources that are supportive in nature for both building administrators, observers, as well as classroom teachers. And so let me go ahead and take a look at one of these resources. So here's the Student Indicators of Engagement form on the website, and then right now I'm going to pull up a PDF copy of a document that has been shared with you called the Descriptions of Student Engagement. And so the first look for here is engages in setting learning goals, and I've isolated that here. And so what SURN has done is they've provided a crosswalk of sorts to provide some assistance and share some description and examples. So when you go into the research, when you go into some of these meta-analyses and take a look at some of the individual research studies, taking a look at some of what the research has found to be effective, these are some descriptions and examples of what it looks like for students to engage in setting learning goals. Along the same lines, this is what it shouldn't look like, and so we've provided some non-examples here. The other thing you'll see for the state of Virginia is that these are correlated with the revised teacher evaluation system, so the Uniform Performance Guideline for Teachers. So as you see here, engages in setting learning goals is aligned with the assessment standard 4.2, and you can also find where this particular look for is as far as research in Dr. Hattie's work and the Visible Learning book that I just cited a moment ago. It's on pages 163 to 167. And then also what this crosswalk does, it gives you an idea of just how effective these particular look-fors are, and with engages in setting learning goals has an effect size of 0.56. Now, as far as the use of this particular form, one of the things, the ways that I've used this form and found it to be effective has been that it can be overwhelming when you, let's take a look at the form again. And in this particular form you have 13 look-fors that are high effect sizes, and then you also have some lower yield practices for students, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But what a lot of schools that I've worked with last year found to be effective was that as a school leadership team, maybe this year, looking at our school improvement plan, we've identified four of these particular look-fors that we want to work on. So a lot of the professional development we're going to be providing this year, whether that's faculty or grade level or content, will be centered around these particular look-fors. And so again, sitting down in a faculty setting or breaking out in small groups, or what's more meaningful, again, in my opinion, is meeting with departments or grade levels and taking a look at this particular document and really getting into the research. And so if we've identified, let's say, 1 and 2 this year that we're working, focusing on with this particular form, really getting to know what the research says like the back of our hands regarding these particular look-fors. So again, this is a great resource to accompany, and there is one of these for each of the 3 SURN observation forms. Now if I scroll down to the bottom of this particular resource, you'll also see some information regarding what's at the bottom of the form. Let me go back to the form for a moment. So at the bottom of the form, these are some things that in education that are lower yield practices for students. And it's not to say that homework is not effective, but if we're completing these particular observation form over the course of a 9-week period, and as a school leadership team we're analyzing data that's been captured so far, then if we're continually seeing completes worksheets and homework as something that's checked and providing some documentation here, and we're not seeing some of the higher effect sizes, then it's certainly something for us to talk about as a school leadership team. So again, these are lower yield practices for students. It's not saying that they're ineffective, but if we're seeing these happening the majority of the time, then it's certainly something that needs to come up in a post-observation conference and or in our school leadership team meetings if it appears to be something that's prevalent throughout the school. With the examples and non-examples, when I use this particular form, often if they are examples, I'll just simply state the example here. If there is something that is a non-example, I'll go ahead and put non-example in parentheses and then share what that non-example was. It is important with all 3 of these forms to remain objective. Again, we're capturing data. If I walk in halfway through a lesson and I can't assume that something has been done at the beginning of the lesson to set the hook, for example, in one of the other forms looking at teacher pedagogy, so I'm not going to capture that information. It's not an exhaustive checklist, and it's important that both observers and teachers understand that it's not, if something was not observed, it doesn't mean that it's a negative. It just simply means that it wasn't observed. So again, similar to the other data collection tools, we want to keep the subjectivity out of this. As from an observation standpoint, we're capturing objective data. We're capturing what exactly transpired during the lesson. Let me go ahead and pull up the other 2 forms. So here we're looking at effective teacher pedagogy. Again, the look-fors correspond to Dr. Hattie's work. Each of these has an effect size of 0.40 or higher. The forms are similar in nature. As you've seen on some of the other forms, if I'm typing information here, I can either use the scroll bar to expand if I have a lot of text that's entered for a given observation, or again I can drag, and if I want to manipulate the text box to adjust it on the screen, I can do so while I'm completing the observation. As stated in the email and printing video, if you don't adjust the size and go back and when it is time to email the observation form, of course everything will show up. All of the text will show up expanded in a printable version box via the email. Let me go back and take a look at the 3rd form. Again, all 3 of these forms are very similar in nature. They have between 10 to 13 look-fors, and then each of the forms also has between 4 and 5 lower yield practices for teachers. It is important that, as I've mentioned earlier, that both observers and teachers really have a clear understanding of what the research has to say. I found it useful as an observer, whether I'm using a laptop or an iPad, to either have a hard copy of those resource documents with me as I'm completing observations, or an electronic copy to reference to go back and forth between this particular website here and the resource that I shared with you earlier. If you have any more questions, about these particular forms, don't hesitate to use the Contact Us button on the home page of the website.